this is in a management law school or department, right? Is there anything specific about students and graduates in that area regards mental toughness, mental agility, or could it just as easily be rolled out into any other sector as well? And I think either Alessia or Peter might be best placed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've sort of discussed this a bit, but I think Alessia, you could probably give some illustrations from your experience. I know, I think when I spoke to one of your colleagues, Dan, they were saying how it had been particularly helpful for the law students in helping them understand aspects of confidence, for example, when they have to do practicing, making presentations in a courtroom, that kind of thing. But I'm sure, again, in addition to particular aspects of work in a business school or a law school, you have had some experience, I think, in talking to students in other schools, which I must admit, I was kind of interested in hearing a bit about your experience of dealing with these concepts in other departments and schools.
Yeah, sure. So I feel like I don't see any objection into like rolling the program outside of the business and law school. I actually believe it's going to be beneficial, for any students at any level of the study, simply because, as we have described it's a self-awareness journey, and it's helping students to be the best version of themselves, make use of their potential, right? I feel like it's working well for our Faculty of Business and Law, because we have embedded it into a program, an extracurricular program, which students got 15 credits, so it's accredited. It goes into their transcript, so it's approved at university level. So it's not just a program they undertake and get a certificate of completion. They got 15 credits for doing it, and they can prove to employer through the transcripts. We embedded employability into it, and that's where the credit goes to Peter, because we have invited Peter a few times to talk to our students and go that step further. I was giving them a background of the concept. I was explaining why it's important. I was coaching them into developing like objectives starting from the questionnaire. And then Peter comes in and explains why it's linked to employability, how they can apply these concepts to help them, look more employable. And that's where I feel like having a sort of employability session on mental toughness, as the one we got with Peter, that helped us a lot with self-awareness, like the Joe Harry window. You remember, Peter, I really loved like when you talked about eating the elephant, frameworks and all of this stuff. It helped our students. So I feel like it worked well within the business and law faculty thus far, because it's embedded into more of a long-term projection. Now, I like challenges, right? I love experimenting. I love going out of my comfort zone. So I got the chance to, kind of taste this program with like another group of students, the criminology department of our faculty, because as part of another project, I could deliver a couple of sessions on self-awareness. And what's better than mental toughness than triggering your self-awareness? So I put mental toughness into it. And I had a couple of sessions with this cohort, and my experience was slightly different. If I have to be honest, I found a lot more resistance from students. Students were a little bit skeptical, a little bit unsure why they had to study it, because they were to tell me, I'm sorry, but I don't understand how it relates to solving crimes, or I don't understand why it relates to, my laws that I'm studying in politics. And I'm like, okay, well, so I've got good work to do here to make students appreciate why they have to do it. And I feel like I've trialed it, so I didn't have a lot of time. I couldn't deliver the program because I only had a few hours. And after these 3 sessions, actually students told me, well, I can see the benefit now. So what was the key was explaining the concept of mental toughness, the concept of agility and self-awareness goes above and beyond any subject matter. It's interdisciplinary, it's linked, indeed, we've seen applications of this in sports sciences. There must be a reason why, right? So it was important to explain to students why we were doing this. And after an initial hindrances towards undertaking an analysis, they couldn't take the questionnaire because it wasn't me delivering the program. It was just giving an overview of mental toughness. They actually were interested in doing it. So the next steps, I'm now disclosing it. The next steps would be seeing how we can do it at university level, how we can engage other faculties, to deliver this program on a bigger scale. Because for now, the ARU-CPD is only offered to our business and law faculty, but I definitely see the benefit of offering to all students because of the cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary nature of the concept itself. Of course, I might have people objecting it. I might have people being reluctant to it. I might have people saying, well, why should we invest in a program like this? And what's the benefit? Well, we can talk about the benefits, endlessly, but I feel like the benefit is exactly this: empowering people, empowering young professionals, into understanding, at least in higher education. Then the application of this concept goes at all levels, senior management. I know you, Peter, have applied this to senior management and whatever, but at least higher educational level, helping students, to really, really understand who they are, what they stand for, and how they can develop. So I don't see why it should be restricted to a subject matter. This was a long answer to a short question, so I'm sorry for this.
You're such a good guest, Alessia, because every time I think of a question, you actually ask yourself the question and then go on and answer it. So it makes our job really easy. So it's great to listen to. One of the sort of frustrations I know you can come across working in university settings, and sometimes I think we can be a little bit guilty of this in all levels of education, is where on one hand we'll bemoan that students are too modularized, they're too much about their program, they're too assessment focused, the question in the seminar, is this going to be in the exam? And you just think, no, you're here to learn and everything. But then actually it's where that kind of just difficulties in the administration of saying, well, we want to do something that's more about the kind of employability skills we want to develop in our graduates. Surely that should be at the center of a program. And I really like this concept of rating higher education programs, of designing down. Okay, so rather than just saying, oh, we're doing a criminology course, let's pick some modules. You decide what do you want your students to be able to do at the end of the first year, second year, third year, when they graduate. And then you go, well, what kind of assessments do they need to do to show that they're able to achieve those outcomes? And then once you've got that, you'll know what to actually teach them, what to do. Whereas we sort of start the wrong way around with it. We start by saying, well, let's cover theory X and case Y, and then come up with a way of assessing it. And then where do they end up? And then we end up surprised that employers are saying, this isn't what we want in a graduate. So what I really like is that through the project you were doing as a faculty, you've started from that top, where do they end up? And it sounds so common sense, and people might be shocked to hear that this doesn't happen this way in universities. You start, where are they going to be at the end? Right, well, let's put something in place to help them get there. And I know from my own experiences, it is so rare, and it's just a different way of thinking about things that sort of becomes the challenges. But I think the more we can have people like yourselves beating the drum, the happier we'll be. Have you approached any other institutions, Peter?
Well, a few, and I have to say it depends on. It goes back to what I was saying before, that it's all about getting the right connections and contacts and going in and getting agreement at the right level. And I mean, I know for a fact, Doug, you had a big involvement with Manchester Metropolitan University on was it a kind of similar? It was a similar sort of thing in as far as they were planning to do it right across the university. Isn't that right?
I think we had a pilot project, but it's a very large scale pilot project, and the plan was to evaluate that. And unfortunately, COVID got in the way of that. And so it was a long-term project. It was a 5-year project, but COVID put a big hole in the middle of it, and I had to go back to start, or work out how to get past that point.
Yeah, I mean, we have used it at Lancaster University with certain courses that as you heard from the beginning, I'm the postgraduate careers manager in the management school. So I've used the questionnaire and the reports with MSc International Business and Strategy students, and one particularly interesting group was when I had the opportunity to do it with the International Masters Program for Managers, which is a very unusual program because it is, as the name says, it's international. So it involves students based in Montreal, Yokohama, Rio de Janeiro, Bangalore. So it's very international, but they're all senior managers and they're all involved in big organizations. This is the opposite end of the scale, really, to the group that Alessia has been working on. These are managers who've been there, done it all, and now what they're doing is sort of stepping back and thinking about how to go to the next level. So this is what's really interesting about it. It's as relevant and helpful for those people, judging by what they've said about it, as it is to these younger students, and I think that's really exciting. But in terms of going back to your original question, I think the point is, as I said, it's all about getting buy-in. And one of the beauties of the situation that arose at Anglia Ruskin was that it started, and you hit the nail on the head, John, I think, when you said it's doing it the other way around. They went to find out what employers in their region were saying they were looking for in graduates, and then they set about designing a program that would help the students get those qualities that the employers said that they were looking for. And I think that is why they've come up with something which is so well, 1, unusual, 2, apparently very effective, 3, very popular with the students, and 4, seemingly beginning to deliver the thing that they set out to provide. So, and then, as I said, the key to the success is other important things. Buy-in from senior management so that they're completely on board with the approach, the technology, the acknowledging there are some costs, but seeing that those costs are part of the value that they're providing. And then, having a team like Alessia's worked with that can kind of deliver to such a high standard the project and the outcomes. So it's having a number of things in place. It's not just like a kind of one step thing. That project, I think, exemplifies what needs to be done. And I think, as I said, when I tried writing about how you could use this in higher education, those were the points that I was sort of beginning to recognize. But the project at ARU is a personification of all of those important points. So I feel really privileged to have been part of working with them on that, because I think they've done an amazing job.
Yeah, well, I've been very excited looking at it from a distance. So I'm going to address a variation of John's earlier question to you, Alessia, but I'm picking up a question that Peter asked me earlier. Peter asked, do we take it to other institutions? We've actually, worldwide, we've taken it to a number of higher education institutions. And there's an issue about sustainability, but we have actually taken it to another law faculty in another UK university. But they didn't look at it from the perspective of employability. They looked at it from the perspective of well-being. They found that students, especially in the middle years of a program, could struggle a great deal. And so their focus was on well-being. Have you come across any demand for that, or thoughts about perhaps developing a version of the program to address that?
Actually, it's very interesting that you mentioned this, Doug, because last week we were analyzing a bit of the results we got from students on the MTQ Plus, and what we found out, and now releasing some data here, is that level 5 are the ones who seems to dip a little. They feel they are not in control of their life as much as level 6 are. So this is coming from results of the questionnaire. So life control is actually very low in our student population at level 5 amongst the cohorts that have undertaken the program. And even though, I've got data in here, even though they've got a good level of achievement orientation and goal orientation, it seems like the confidence and control are the ones, they are quite, needs a little bit to work on. And this can be linked very clearly with well-being, wouldn't it? Like if you're not in control of your life, or you're not in control, of what you do, like you can easily stress out. So how you manage stressors and pressures to make sure they're actually, understanding how you can turn a situation from a negative stance to a positive stance. So we haven't applied it from a well-being point of view as such yet, but I'm very interested into investigating, like the concepts more from this perspective moving forward, especially because of the data that backs this up. But one thing that we're doing is now in the pipeline is we are trying to see how this program could benefit students at college level. So students that are doing their A levels, their GCSEs, they still haven't gone into education. So trying to think how we can target a different student group. And we are now working on a partnership with a college in Cambridge to see if I can deliver this program to their students, and they would get credits to bring forward in case they want to join ARU. So we can see double benefit here. We can see like students starting to think about self-awareness, students to start to think about their well-being, their control, commitment, challenge, and confidence before making that change, before making the transition to go into universities, to try to help them be prepared earlier on. Plus, we try to link these colleges with the university through a partnership and accrediting it, and then they can bring it forward when they join the university. So it's still in the pipeline, but I feel like this could be another way of looking at a program like this.
Absolutely. And what you're discovering, Alessia, is what we've kind of learned over the years. We have to do it piece by piece, but we go into secondary education. We started year 9, 10, 11, 12 because they're the exam years. And then bit by bit, people realize you should be looking at mental toughness development much earlier. So they start looking at year 7. Then some schools say, oh, we're not getting the right students in the right frame of mind. Let's talk to our feeder schools. And before you know where you are, Alessia, you're going to be dealing with infant schools.
You'd be writing children's books, though.
Yeah.
I think it's such a good project, and I love the way that then Alessia would encourage students to, when they get to university, that they're already thinking more broadly about their own personal development and not kind of just going through the motions of, okay, this is what I do next. I enroll and then I wait to be molded into something, and that sense of actually taking charge of something. And I think the well-being things are a really interesting area as well, and especially that dip in the middle, because I mean, it was 20 years ago since I was in the middle of my degree, but I used to think that I had it hard compared to the generation before me at university because I had a part-time job at Pizza Hut for 20 hours a week or whatever. But I look at students now, they've all work a lot of hours because they have to. Finding accommodation is incredibly difficult. And then equally, there's so many graduates relative to jobs now that it's more competitive when you get out the other end as well. So I'll probably come to Peter first. I think if I can politely say, you've been around enough years to have seen a lot of cohorts of students. Do they almost need mental toughness now more than more than they have done in the past.
I think all of the cohorts of students over the years that I've worked with would have benefited from the kind of insights that you can gain from this. But as I go back to what I was saying about Alessia and her module, you know, it's one thing to do the questionnaire and to get the report, and if you're fortunate, get a bit of feedback from somebody who's qualified to talk to you about it. But the beauty of a program like the MAFA program is that it sort of sets the scene. It explains how this could be valuable. They then engage with it. They then learn from it, and then they get a chance to reflect back and think about what they can do next as a process of development. So it's the fact that it's packaged in that 8-week or 9-week program that I think makes it especially valuable.
Well, I think that's probably a good point at which to stop. I think what you've described is fascinating, and it's been fantastic listening to both of you. And I'm pretty sure that we will ask you to come back because, as Alessia's mentioned, you are now looking at creating a piece of research around it and eventually perhaps producing a paper on the success of this project. So I'm sure there'll be people very interested to know about that. And there'll also be people interested to know about the ways that you develop and tweak the model, particularly with the students. But for me, there have been a couple of takeaways, in fact, several takeaways. The first one was that here is a genuine attempt at focusing on preparing students for the world of work. As Peter said, quite often we've been approached by universities and we've worked with the universities, but in a sense they pay lip service to the idea of employability. It's often a rehash of old-fashioned career guidance. It's not really understood in the way that you've understood it and the way you're developing it. And it's also interesting that you've captured something that we work hard at capturing, and that's that it's focused on the student, and it's focused on understanding mental toughness from their own perspective in terms of what they want to achieve. I think that's a tremendous achievement. And then the way you've engaged your clients, your students, in shaping what you're doing, I think is also really valuable. And I think there's a lot of trainers and coaches out there in the world at large who could learn from that. And they often think they're the experts. I'm going to tell you something, or I'm going to do something with you. Well, actually, you're working with the person, not at the person. So there are 3 really valuable things that have come out of it for me.
Yeah, I'd echo those. I think particularly the sense that I think it's so easy to go down the route of this really prescribed program of jump through hoop X, Y, and Z, and then you'll be tougher. So I really like the way that it's structured around this, as you said, right at the very start of this here, like the journey of self-awareness. And look, I'm sure any employers listening will take a second look at those CVs that say I've come from the Faculty of Business and Law at ARU. So look, it's been lovely to meet and lovely to talk. Thanks very much.
Okay, so I'm sure there are going to be people interested. You may well find that there are other universities suddenly paying some attention to this. So if somebody wanted to get hold of both of you, how would they get hold of you? How would they get hold of you, Alessia?
So I've got a LinkedIn profile, which I monitor closely. So if you want to drop me a direct message on LinkedIn, you can get hold of me on LinkedIn, or I'm happy to share my email address if it's of any use at all, so they can get hold of me in this way.
Okay, we'll add the email address to the podcast. And Peter?
Yeah, likewise with me. LinkedIn's the most obvious and easy way. I check that regularly. But obviously as well, I've got a direct connection with AQR International, so you can always email me via AQR International.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thank you both. It's always an experience working with you, Alessia. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.